That's more like it. The background starts empty, then a moment later fades in while sliding down. Animating the background. In this lesson, we're going to start bringing some animation to the hero header section of our landing page. By the end of this lesson, you'll know how to set up and animate the background image, as well as how to make sure the animation looks great. Open the sample code file and open folder 00 start. A completed version of this lesson's code is in the folder 01 animated background. In this you'll find there's an index.html file containing some initial HTML to get us started, as well as style sheets and images folders. In our HTML, we can see references to both the CSS files. I have separated them so that the site's general styles can be used and moved the parts we'll be most interested in to a file called header.css. Just to note, I'll not be including prefixes in the code we write. This means adding WebKit or Moz or other prefixes to properties such as transform and animation. Generally, you'll want to put these in place before publishing your work, but to keep things readable, I won't be showing them during the coding. The downloaded files do include the needed prefixes. This is the main content. It's found in the file index.html. It's fairly simple for now, just a header element containing some content, images, text, and headings. We'll be styling and animating this using our CSS. Opening our CSS file in stylesheets/header.css, we can see the initial styles for the landing page. We have the header, which is set to cover the full height of the viewport. Further down the file, you'll see the content styles. I've followed a naming convention here, where everything starts with header so that we can more easily find the source of these styles should we need to change things later. Here's what we have to begin. It's a simple layout, hopefully simple enough that it can be tailored to your needs. Let's start with the boring background. We'll get rid of this plain background color and animate in an image instead. A great resource I often turn to for high quality images is Unsplash. Set up a few years ago as a reaction to the lack of good free online photography resources, the site now offers a massive range of useful images that you can use in your designs for free. I chose this image for our example header. To prepare it for our use, I scaled it down a bit, compressed it with TinyPNG, and saved it in the images folder as background.jpg. Opening the header CSS file in Style Sheets, you'll see there's a header block at the top. In this, we've set the background color to a dark grey. Now, rather than simply replacing what we removed with a new background property referencing our newly downloaded image, I'm going to do something more interesting. We could set a background position on our background and then animate that, but I don't think that will be a good idea. There are two properties that animate very well in the browser. These are opacity and transform. We use the transform property for positioning, scaling, and rotating elements, which is great because browsers can animate these movements smoothly. However, this means that if we try to animate the background position property of our new background image, we might see jankiness where the animation isn't smooth. So let's find a way to use transform to animate our background image more smoothly. Since the transform property needs to apply to individual HTML elements, we need to either add a container element to our page for the background image, or we can skip that and use a pseudo-element. Pseudo-elements are a way we can use CSS to create virtual elements on our page without adding more markup, and can be quite versatile. If you look at the content in our header.css, you'll see we already have one pseudo-element called header:after. Let's add another pseudo-element above that. Pseudo-elements need a content property, so we'll specify that. We also position this element so that it covers the entire header using absolute positioning. We can then add the background. We're using multiple backgrounds here. By itself, the image we've chosen is a bit bright, and the text might be difficult to read on top of it, so I've added a linear gradient. Multiple backgrounds always confuse me, but they start with the frontmost background first, and then the second background will appear behind that. If you have it the other way around, you might not see your gradient as the background image will be in the way. Lastly, we're setting the background size to cover. This tells the browser to crop the image either horizontally or vertically to fill the entire shape. It will lose some of the image, but it won't stretch. Now we have the background in place inside its own pseudo-element container. Let's animate the pseudo-element. We'd like this image to fade in, but also slide down. Combining animations like this can make for quite a nice result, and it will allow us to try some timing functions to get a really smooth result. To begin, let's write our keyframes. We set out keyframes like so, with a name, fade, slide down, and in this case, a starting and end position. At 0%, which is the start, we want to tell the browser the background's starting position. It needs to be invisible and also positioned a little higher. We do this using the transform property with translate. At 100%, which is the end of the animation, we have the ending position. It has an opacity of 1, so that we can see it, and there's no transform. This gives us both vertical movement and a change in opacity. With the keyframes built, let's apply them to the pseudo-element. Inside the header before block, add the following line. Animation, fade slide down, 0.5 seconds, ease out and forwards. This applies our animation to the pseudo-element. Going from left to right, it first tells it the name of the animation, then the duration of half a second, the timing function of ease out, and finally the animation fill mode. This last one can be a little tricky, but it basically means that the animation should stop on the last keyframe and stay there. In this way, the styles in the 100% keyframe are the styles that will remain once the animation has finished. So the background fades and slides in. That's good, but the animation is a bit sudden. Let's try to improve it. First, let's try adjusting the duration. UI animations tend to need to happen quite fast, and usually the value of 0.5 seconds is a good rule of thumb. However, for our landing page, we'd like the animation to feel a bit more luxurious, like it's not in a big hurry. So let's set the duration to 2 seconds. Here's how it looks. That's certainly more relaxed, but it still feels a little stilted. Next, let's take a look at the timing function. Browsers give us a set of pre-built timing functions to work with. This includes ease in, ease out, and more. They're handy, but they tend to be a little bit boring and not always ideal for larger animations. We can instead create our own timing function to change the way our pseudo-element moves on the screen. It would be better if the animation started a little quicker, but then very gradually slows down with more of an elongated glide toward the end. It would create a more subtle effect toward the end of the animation, ideally making it less likely to clash with any other animations going on after the background has appeared. For working with timing functions, I'm a fan of cubicbezier.com, but you can use the built-in inspector tools in Chrome or Firefox to edit your cubic Bezier curves. In this case, I'm going to create a kind of extreme variation of ease in, moving the starting point to 0.5 and the ending point to 0.1. It'll start off really fast, but then take its time toward the end. Let's see how that looks in the animation property. We type cubic-bezier, and in the brackets, the coordinates 0, 0.5, 0, 1. We can now see it in action. That's better. But before we can call this one done, let's think about the timing of when the animation starts. It's a little bit sudden. The page loads and the animation starts immediately. Let's add some delay. We update our CSS to include a delay of 0.5 seconds. Let's see the effect. Ouch, that's not great. The background shows, then it disappears when the animation starts. Let's fix that by adding in a starting opacity for the pseudo-element. That's more like it. The background starts empty, then a moment later fades in while sliding down. With timing functions, it's always worth experimenting and finding what works for you and the project you're working on. Never stick to the pre-built timing functions. We'll be using lots of different timing functions as we go through creating the animations on this landing page. It's always worthwhile trying your own and seeing what works for you. In this lesson, we've learnt about multiple CSS backgrounds, as well as how to apply backgrounds and animations to pseudo-elements. We've also seen how tweaking the timing functions on the animation can make a boring animation more interesting. We've also seen how we can apply an animation delay to add better pacing to the way content is revealed. Next, we'll apply some of these ideas of timing and pacing to the content in front of the background image. We'll create and animate the titles and logo.